Patty Culhane, Al Jazeera, Sterling, Virginia.
Let's get more on that story for you. Joining us live here on the NewsHour, Todd Green, who's written about Islamophobia in the West. Todd Green, why is it people like Donald Trump can apparently now get away with saying things that they perhaps wouldn't have dreamt about saying even just 3 or 4 or 5 months ago?
Well, clearly matters are getting worse in the United States when it comes to Islamophobia, but I think two things are at play here that are exacerbating the situation. One is the presidential election cycle, and we have seen since 9/11 that during presidential election seasons, there is a rise in anti-Muslim rhetoric and speech. The second thing that, of course, is going on are current terrorist attacks in Paris, earlier this year, Charlie Hebdo, and now more recently in California. And this leads to sort of this perfect storm, if you will, of Islamophobia. And Donald Trump is tapping into that fear and that anxiety in order to galvanize votes and support. And he's probably doing so in a very calculated manner. I think he believes it will work.
He's either a hate preacher or a savior of America, depending upon who one talks to. But when it comes to the nomination and it comes to the election, could he be both?
Yes, it will depend on your perspective, of course. Some people certainly see Donald Trump as a sort of savior figure. He says what no one else is willing to say and what other people don't have the courage to say. He's rebuking political correctness, or this idea that we have to be sensitive to people of different religious or racial or ethnic backgrounds. So for some people that's the case. For other people this is a nightmare, including for many Muslim Americans, but also for many other Americans who don't recognize the America that Donald Trump is preaching and who want to offer a different vision than what we're hearing from him as of late.
How do you think America reacts to that in a quieter moment? I mean, within that folksy style, when he's out there delivering those sound bites, is it possible that the people who would go for him, who are warming to him perhaps, and who wouldn't have gone for him before in the square states, in the middle of America, might actually like that message, but they're not going to go public with liking that message?
No, that's what makes this so difficult to figure out, right? A lot of pundits and political commentators have been wondering, well, how long can this last with Donald Trump, and is this serious? Is the support for him serious? But I sense that there is some pretty firm support for Trump that's not going to budge, in part because there are a lot of people who may not want to come out loud and say the kind of things that Trump is saying, but who do believe it. And we see this in polling, too. The percentage of likely Republican caucus goers in Iowa who think that Islam should be banned is around 1/3 of them. There are about 54% of Republican voters, likely Republican voters, who believe that President Obama is a Muslim, a majority in the Republican Party who believe that Islam is out of touch with American values. They may not always say that publicly, but they want someone in the political realm who will, and Donald Trump seems to be filling that role for them.
If in theory it's President Trump come January 2017, does that mean that the idea of freedom of expression, being able to say what you want, to be who you are, is something that you can do if you've got an ID card that's got the right kind of stamp on it, and if you don't have that ID card, forget it, because it's simply not going to happen?
Yes, freedom of speech is always really a tricky matter when it comes to who has the privilege and who has the power to articulate a certain message, and then what happens when people are not in line with that. And I do fear that if Donald Trump becomes President Trump, it will really hamper a certain type of freedom of speech when it comes to challenging this form of bigotry. In fact, for many of us who study Islamophobia and who are concerned with what's happening, we are more and more trying to encourage other allies and other people who are troubled by these events to label this racism, to label this bigotry, to label this as Islamophobia. That's exactly the kind of language that I fear that under a Trump administration would be quarantined and would be targeted in many ways.
Todd Green, thank you.
Thank you.
The American rock band that was performing during last month's